It's like DMT, except it allows you to channel the dead. Major FDA oversight. I smell a class action lawsuit. Better than food, man. Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to Better Than Food Book Reviews. I'm your host, Clifford Lee Sargent. Great to see you as always. Hope you're doing well. Get that coffee. Delicious. Hope you had nice holidays. First, really quick, if you are enjoying these videos, if you could please give a like and subscribe to the channel, it would truly help me out, and I sincerely appreciate it. Thank you very much. So, let's talk about a book. Today is Negative Space by the American author B.R. Yeager, published in 2020. This was sent to me by my friend and patron Evan. Thanks a bunch, man. I really appreciate it. B.R. Yeager is an author of horror novels with a film background from Western Massachusetts. Negative Space has been popping up on my radar for quite some time. Below, I've linked to an interview with Yeager on the podcast of another horror author, Chris Zeischegg, which helped inform this review. And I'll be reviewing Zeischegg's horror novel, The Magician, soon. This is a contemporary experimental horror novel depicting various elements of the Gen Z experience. Life online, drugs, and abysmal prospects in decaying working-class, small-town America. Yeager has taken these modern elements and fused them into a nightmarish story by adding the themes of black magic and the supernatural. The story tracks the fate of 4 teenagers in this small town: Jill, Lou, Amir, and Tyler, whose doomed fate becomes wrapped up with the fate of all the others. All of it revolves around Tyler. The book is told from the first-person perspectives of the first 3 characters, formed from a collection of writings that resemble their diary entries. Both Jill and Amir are in love with Tyler. Lou is of ambiguous gender, sometimes referred to as he or she. They all live in a town called Kinsfield, New Hampshire, which has become infected by a collective psychological plague, as well as, or largely due to, a new psychedelic drug being sold at mini-marts called Whorl. It comes in the forms of leaves you chew or smoke. It's like DMT, except it allows you to channel the dead. Major FDA oversight. I smell a class action lawsuit. Among its hallucinogenic effects are visions of black strings coming out of everything, orifices and otherwise. Kind of reminded me of the weird, squiggly demon material from the movie Princess Mononoke. It's this anime from Miyazaki. This weird tendril kind of stuff. It also creates very, very sinister, strange dreams. Whorl is a synonym for spiral. I wouldn't at all be surprised to learn that Yeager was inspired by Junji Ito, whom I've never read actually, but I've been meaning to. Junji Ito is a Japanese comic book author responsible for the spiral horror thing, right? The drug also inspires ritualistic behavior involving altars and talismans, and the users enter a trance state via humming. What's particular about this small town they're in is that many of the inhabitants are committing suicide. I think all of, or almost all of, the main characters lurk in an online forum posting pictures of the latest ones in town. Negative Space depicts a place and time when the world seems to be on a clear path to self-annihilation. And coincidentally, highly coincidentally, that was the precise state of the world into which the book was released in March of 2020, right when things got bad. No other cautionary American phrase is more applicable to this book than fuck around and find out. I would guess among the possible inspirations for the narrative, the rising suicide rate in the USA, the opioid epidemic, the alienation fostered by internet culture, and the disintegration of small towns across America, found most prominently maybe in the Rust Belt. Yeager gives us his commentary on the state of American life by seeming to intentionally make the small American town resemble any small American town, filled with familiar archetypes to those of us who grew up with them. Like many other readers, it seems, it reminds me of my own various small hometowns, and friends or acquaintances I had, some of whom are no longer alive. Small-town America is often a horrific landscape, though certainly not always. But Yeager has presented this town as a kind of prison for the teenagers in the book, wherein not only the prisoners but also the wardens are starting to go off the deep end. The book is visually evocative, written with attention to sensory detail and material texture. You can often feel and smell it, which is often unpleasant, but effective. It's like reading about a war-torn environment, but the war is happening inside people, though manifesting outside. Like the citizens in the town, nature also seems to be going insane and destroying itself. Our culture here in the West has been diagnosed as having a crisis of meaning, and within this book, Yeager has captured the desperate anxiety of a generation searching for confirmation that their life has some sort of meaning, some sort of significance. The character Tyler has unfortunately discovered something very significant, and dedicates the remainder of his rapidly diminishing life to it, often channeling it through a form of religious, ritualistic, sacrificial self-mutilation, utilizing sacred artifacts such as his box cutter, or the nests of wasps. Underneath the grotesque physicality of the narrative's material body horror lies a dark conflict within the main character Tyler. He seems like the main character to me. I read it as a struggle for empowerment or emancipation, for freedom. To find and experience something real and intense, and profound, even if horrific. To voyage somewhere entirely new, a new realm of experience. Freedom from the strange prison he was born into, right? It's like the morbid ascetic quest of a small-town drug addict for the truth, no matter the consequences to himself or others. But of course, once you open the door to living death, well, fuck around and find out. Yeager is, apparently, judging from a photo of him doing a reading, a fan of the band Uniform. For me, that was an aha moment. There's an overlap between the themes both the band and Yeager work with. You should go have a listen, you'll see what I mean. I've seen them live, they put on a hell of a show. I mean, picture a film adaptation of Negative Space. Picture the Thanksgiving scene and picture it to Uniform's Perfect World. And the guitar drops as soon as Tyler makes a first cut. I was like, oh yeah, I get it now. I read it, in a way, as a group of kids giving their society a giant fuck you. It's angsty, perhaps, but legit. The life offered to them seems so abysmal that, for them, opening the door to living death is preferable. They prefer to inhabit that negative space, right? Primarily, the book is a meditation on depression, addiction, and dysfunctional relationships, combined with an element of extreme surreal horror. The characters also begin having these very disturbing dreams. I was just talking about the similarities between drugs and dreams in my latest chapter review of Camille Paglia's Sexual Personae, where I was discussing how both drugs and dreams allow access to altered states that we don't normally have. That's what World does, quite literally opening up a gateway. And it appears that it also allows for a form of collective dreaming among its users, at least how I understand it. A disturbing space that doesn't exist in physical reality, but in which other people can interact with each other. Like the internet. As the book progresses, it seems that the wall dividing the nightmare dream environments and reality gradually begins to break down. Disclaimer, in no way do I recommend you do drugs, and in fact I highly recommend that you do not do them. This book is a great reminder why. It seems that some drug experiences can be very close to death. The only time I actually thought I died was when I tried DMT. Internally, for me, it was more of a near-death experience than the only serious car crash I ever had. Reality was obliterated, yet it wasn't frightening. It was just unbelievably intense, unbelievably profound. Some threshold was crossed, or it was sort of like gazing at the other side. Some curtain seemed to have been pulled back. I didn't see anything, it was just black. Just like space. That was something else. Could drug use open the door to infernal realities? To infernal entities? If anything was able to, that would seem to be it. It's also true, I've heard from first-hand accounts, that when you go far enough into a drug-filled psychosis, things begin manifesting that are representations of danger or death, like things that look like demons. As if your body is warning you by giving you a vision of a demon in order to scare you straight, so you don't die. It's like a biological defense mechanism. That seems perfectly applicable to this book, except in this story, the demon is real. There's a very interesting theory posited in this book that is it's about a botanical biological defense mechanism that is actually responsible for the suicides. That's one theory that's thrown out in this book. The book seems to be a reaction of horror to the physicality of material life, as well as death or the afterlife. A reaction of horror to existence and non-existence. A reaction of horror. A reaction of horror to everything. Another theme the characters are contending with is the passage of time, which seems particularly prescient in a way that Yeager couldn't have realized as this book was published in March of 2020, and we were all just beginning to lose years of our lives in a strange, ongoing, nebulous void caused by the pandemic, the true aftershocks of which haven't even been felt yet, I'd wager. I'll read you some. This is from an entry by Amir. Time compresses the older you get. Days turn to weeks, turn to months, turn to seasons, turn to years, until your life resides in just one moment expanding forever, where each step and breath folds wrinkles into your face, carving minute, irreversible wounds between your joints, pressing down the notches between your spine, driving your ankles and knees to ruin. I feel it now, and it'll only be worse in the future. You see, that's what it feels like waking up every day at 35. I know the older folks in the audience, I get it, but... So ultimately, what did I think? Well, the book is very teenage, in the way it's written and the attitudes expressed. It effectively captures that headspace, but for me, the morose tone started to become monotonous. Started to become kind of emo, you know? That's what we used to call things like this back in the day. The moments of sincere emotional expression sometimes work, but sometimes don't. I think this is just because of the style it's written in, you know? It feels like entries from LiveJournal or MySpace back in the day. It sometimes felt like a mixture of transgressive literature and YA fiction. It rides that line, oscillating back and forth, right? What I mean is it's an adolescent book in its themes, characters, and style. I think I would have gotten more out of it if I had read it between the ages of like 18 and 20. Unfortunately, the Death World dreams felt like just reading the description of a modern video game, or the experimental AI videos you see cropping up everywhere. I was more engaged during the moments when a character has a moment of painful lucidity. Those moments were more horrifying than anything of the supernatural. Tyler's note, in the end, I'll admit, was quite chilling. Well done. And, reading the book, property is not the most well lit. Kinda had a little bit of anxiety going around. It definitely, started to hear some noises out my window that were unusual. Yeah. He did something right in here. Overall, it's not my thing, but he did, for a horror novel, you could do a lot worse. There's another line Yeager is jumping across back and forth throughout the book, between the plausible and the implausible, between realism and surrealism. But as the book progresses, the realism diminishes to a degree where, in my opinion, the narrative suffers. It was sort of like he had nowhere else to go, like he had to really punch it, like here comes the ending, so we gotta do something. And it didn't work for me. It felt like it sort of lost its track somewhere in there. Of course, we sort of all know, as soon as you open the book, how everything is going to end. But something felt missing. I won't tell you what happens, but it's very similar to the problem with House of Leaves. Starts off great, then just goes a little too epic supernatural. The character Lou's entries were kind of interesting, in that the character seems both autistic and synesthetic, and Yeager communicates this through writing style. But the whole story with the character Arnie felt incongruous, and that's where I started to fall off. It was a change in tone to something almost occasionally comedic, and I know I was complaining about the monotonous nature before, but it didn't work for me. It felt awkward. It seemed like a tangential deviation from the main narrative. Though Lou's fate in general is the most mysterious of them all, it diverges from the fate of the other characters. I think Yeager is able to construct a great horror atmosphere. He has that ability to build up the dread, For me, the most unsettling thing about the book was the proliferation of suicides. But the ending, for me, did not work personally. I didn't dislike the book. I think there's some strong stuff. But ultimately, I'm kind of neutral. Yeager is not a bad author. I just don't think this is the best he's capable of. As to Yeager's influences for the story, it seems he may have been influenced by philosophical pessimism. He mentioned Eugene Thacker in that interview I mentioned. I still haven't read any Thacker. I've got In the Dust of This Planet on my shelf, but probably Ligotti, too, for sure. So you should read it. Anyone who's into Thomas Ligotti, Dennis Cooper, Bret Easton Ellis, especially if you enjoyed The Shards, and H.P. Lovecraft. The writings of Werner Baumhauer in the book, I think it was Werner Baumhauer, it might have been a different book, but I'm not sure. I think it was this Baumhauer guy, were nearly paraphrases of the writings of H.P. Lovecraft. This is from an entry by Lou, and I believe the whole entry is meant to be a portion of the text from a book Lou's reading. We float on the surface of an unfathomable ocean, and though we may stick our hands, our feet, our faces beneath, we can never go much farther without drowning. And that reminded me of a famous line from H.P. Lovecraft's The Call of Cthulhu, which is the following. We live on a placid island of ignorance in the midst of black seas of infinity, and it was not meant that we should voyage far. Right? So if Yeager wasn't directly inspired by Lovecraft's The Call of Cthulhu when writing that entry, I'd be shocked. I think that was meant to be a book by Werner Baumhauer. It might be a different one. I think there's several books, but it doesn't give you the source in the entry. So 3 out of 5 coffees. Better than food-ish. Didn't love it. Didn't hate it. If you're into horror, check it out. All right. Coffee time. For those of you who are new, thank you so much for stopping by and watching. I take all the names of the patrons on Patreon who are financially supporting the show, I place their names in this mason jar, and I pull out a name for every review. And whoever's name is pulled out, I send a hard copy of the book I'm reviewing, plus a bag of coffee, roasted by yours truly. And the coffee is delicious. If you would like to get in on that and help support the show, I sincerely appreciate it. Thank you very much. You can click on the link below or go to patreon.com/books are better than food, and the tiers start at $5 per video. In addition, for becoming a paid patron, you'll also get access to all this cool stuff. And international shipping is included, however, it appears that I can't send coffee to the UAE or Qatar, so if you're a patron from those regions, please get in touch with me and we'll work it out. Thanks a bunch. Thank you very much all my patrons for your continued support. It really means a lot. Wishing you the best new year possible, and best of luck. Okay, here we go. JP. Thank you very much, JP. Really appreciate it. You're going to receive Negative Space by B.R. Yeager, plus a bag of coffee, roasted by yours truly, and hope you love both. Cheers. Please subscribe if you have not already, and hit the thumbs up if you enjoyed this, and always remember, die reading. Alright, great to see you as always, take care of yourselves, Happy New Year, and I'll talk to you soon. Ciao.